American Boston.
Please listen very carefully. This is Amy Sweeney on Flight 11. We've been hijacked. 2 attendants have been stabbed.
Do you have any idea where you're headed?
No. People in coach think it's a routine emergency. We've asked for a doctor, but none's on board.
Can you tell us anything more about the hijackers?
Yes. They have knives and mace. They say they have a bomb.
Okay, how are the people who were stabbed?
One flight attendant's okay. I'm not sure. The other may not make it. Oh my God, something's wrong here!
What's happening? Amy, are you still there?
We're in rapid descent. We're all over the place.
Can you look out the window and tell us where you are?
I see water, buildings. We're flying low. We're flying very, very low. We're flying way too low. Oh my God,
Den här dagen började som vilken dag som helst. Man vaknade, gjorde sig i ordning och gick till skolan eller jobbet. Man gjorde det man alltid brukade göra. Inte vetande om vad som komma skall. Inte riktigt förberedd. Det är så det börjar. Vem kunde ana att 11 september skulle bli sorgens dag?
The biggest challenge, of course, is trying to remember the day before an event that sort of wiped everyone's memory clean. In September of 2001, I worked for WPIX, independent television station in New York City. We called it the WB11 News at 10, and I was the weeknight co-anchor, along with the New York City veteran named Kaidi Tong. Good evening, everyone. Some very intense weather hit our area tonight.
It was crazy, I'm telling you.
Being Channel 11, the station had for years used the Twin Towers as a sort of an 11. So that was always in our background. The venerable Wall Street firm Morgan Stanley Dean Witter is in hot water tonight. So you go back and you look at the things that were in the news that night. First of all, was the weather.
2 buildings were hit by lightning in the city. Nobody was hurt, luckily.
And that seems like sort of strange juxtaposition, because one thing everybody remembers about the morning of September 11th, it was the most beautiful, gorgeous, clear-skied day of the year. I remember the Yankees were rained out that night. And those were sort of some of the things that we'd focused on as the big concerns that night. That and politics.
The clock is ticking with less than 24 hours to go until polls open. Mayoral candidates pound the pavement.
When people hear my vision of focusing on the Twin Towers of my candidacy, and I hope my mayoralty, that will take me to victory.
So many of the news stories that were on television on September 10th were rendered utterly meaningless and forgotten.
Terrorattacken är en sån tragedi att man inte minns vad man gjorde dagen innan. Men man minns den 11 september. Jag var i skolan och hade lektion. Rektorn kom och informerade oss om vad som hade hänt. Vi ställde oss upp och hade en tyst minut. Jag minns att hela skolan samlades i aulan för att lärarkåren ville prata om vad som hade hänt. Jag såg att flera av oss grät.
I think probably there were 50,000 people in the building during any part of the day, and 250,000 people transiting through the World Trade Center during the course of a business day. And to me, it was like being the mayor of a small town, and maybe not such a small town. If you think of 250,000 people, you know, you're talking about something like Providence, Rhode Island.
World Trade Center bestod av 2 tvillingtorn. Det norra tornet blev klart i december 72 och det var 417 meter högt i tak. Och masten som monterades ihop i juli 73 så blev det ytterligare 109 meter. Det södra tornet var klart i juli 73 och det saknade antenn och spira. Och det mätte ungefär 415 meter högt i tak. Och ungefär 417 meter när observationsdäcket blev klart i december 75. Det norra tornet var då världens största första byggnad.
There was a number of artists that actually worked directly with some of the office people and the corporate space. You know, one group of artists they employed 10 floors of the building or so and had different people put shades down so it spelled out a word.
You could actually really feel the movement of the building at times, but the most incredible thing was the sound of the wind. And the wind became like not a person, but it was an entity. It was there all the time, and you could feel it, you could hear it. I never liked staying there alone. It was a very spooky place.
I loved it. I thought it was amazing. It was raw, very dry. You could see all the insulation on the beams above.
Våren 76 så invigdes restaurangen Windows of the World och senare även Wild Blue på våningarna 106 och 107. World Trade Center hade världens mest populära och kända restauranger. De var välbesökta av turister och affärsmän och för olika arrangemang som bröllop och dylik.
There was a lot of momentum. The campaign was optimistic, and you could sort of feel that at the events. You know, every party, every parade, every meet and greet on the street, it just got more and more exciting, and it seemed to grow exponentially. And so my only goal as, you know, a 17-year-old kid with a little camera was to capture that excitement. I think the eeriest aspect is that we say September 11th with glee. It was something we were looking forward to. For months, we were like, can't wait till September 11th.
We're taking it back with Adam, Glenn, Paolo. We're shaking it up. September 11th.
I want to be the Democrat who is a bridge.
You could use the Twin Towers as a metaphor back then. You could use Ground Zero as a metaphor.
Ground Zero of Democrat USA, the west side of the
Looking back on it now, it's sort of shocking to hear, but they were just things he said.
Det pågick en valkampanj som skulle avslutas den 11 september 2001. I månader så hade politiker predikat för att locka väljare. Men det var just ett tal som hölls som skulle bli ihågkommet. Och det här talet hölls dagen innan terrorattacken.
You show up, you put one foot in front of another, you get on the rig and you go out and you do the job, which is a mystery and a surprise. You have no idea when you get on that rig. No matter how big the call, no matter how small, you have no idea what God's calling you to.
I never remember him saying before, when you get on the rig, the fire truck, that you never know whether you're going to come home or not. And we all know that, but to hear him say it, you know, it resonated.
A difficult job, and God calls you to it, and then he gives you a love for it, so that a difficult job will be well done.
The sacrifices that you make in giving so much to strangers, those are all words that became so meaningful to all of us.
Turn to him each day, put your faith and your trust and your hope and your life in his hands, and he'll take care of you, and you'll have a good life.
Be proud and be grateful for all that you have, because when you get on that rig, you never know if you're going to come back.
Amen.
Varför skulle man vilja kapa ett plan och flyga in i ett torn? Vem skulle frivilligt döda tusentals oskyldiga människor? Och även sig själv. Varifrån kom idén och vilka var det som gjorde det?
Hamburg, Germany, 1994. By now, bin Laden has sway over Arab radicals not only in the Middle East and America, but in Europe as well. Hamburg is home to Islamic radicals who share bin Laden's worldview. In a drab housing complex on this college campus, one of the men who will execute the bloodiest terror attack in history is undergoing a dark transformation. A 27-year-old Egyptian graduate student named Mohammed Atta pads around his tiny apartment in blue flip-flops. Atta comes from a secular middle-class family in Cairo, Egypt. He's in Germany to get a master's degree in urban planning. Atta's hard work, discipline, and technical skills have earned him high marks from his professors.
You know, to impress a German, you have to be a perfectionist. He was a perfectionist in every sense.
But like many other young Arab men, Atta is angry and alienated. He hates the Egyptian regime back home. It's repressive, it's allied with the US, and it's at peace with Israel. While in Hamburg, Atta begins to embrace radical Islam. He wears the same few pieces of clothing every day. Cotton pants and a sweater his mother knit for him. His roommate sometimes sees Atta sitting alone, eating mashed potatoes right out of a pot.
When it was full, he'd shove the whole pot in the refrigerator with the fork stuck in it. Take it out the next day, eat some more.
Atta prays 5 times a day, no matter where he is. At the local mosque, he hears talk of jihad and martyrdom. He does not yet know anything about the plot that will become 9/11, but his mind and spirit are preparing for it nonetheless.
Mohammed Atta kände missnöje kring omvärlden och blev muslim. Det är många som tror att alla muslimer är terrorister. Jag kan förstå fördomen när media målar upp en bild av att de som begick det här dådet var muslimer. Och därför kan det verka som att det här hade inte hänt om de inte varit muslimer. Men det är helt fel. Jag har träffat några muslimer och tro mig, de är hur schyssta som helst. De är jordnära och sociala. Jag tycker det är hemskt att alla ska behöva dras över en kam bara för att ett litet antal är idioter.
Mecca, Saudi Arabia, May 1995. Egyptian graduate student Mohammed Atta performs a Hajj, the ritual pilgrimage to the holiest sites in Islam. The experience has a profound effect on him. He returns to Hamburg, Germany, but Atta loses interest in his academic work. Radical Islam now dictates his daily routine. As graduation nears, a work-study grant allows him to return to his native Cairo. But when Atta looks for a job, the urban planning major can't find one. All he finds is corruption and nepotism, a world he cannot crack.
I should imagine Atta every single time that he went back to Cairo during his stay in Germany, that he got even more and more frustrated. And I think gradually, he was there for the taking.
By 1996, Mohammed Atta is already a familiar face at this storefront mosque in Hamburg called Al-Quds. It's a hotbed of radical Islam. Among those coming to the nightly prayers is at least one al-Qaida recruiter. Atta takes his place among the rows of angry, alienated young men.
Har du haft en svår uppväxt och lider av psykisk ohälsa, då är risken stor att någon kommer utnyttja det. Man utnyttjar oftast svaga människor för att det blir lättare så. Att manipulera och få någon att göra precis som du vill.
Spring 1998. Mohammed Atta has just returned to graduate school after taking a 3-month unscheduled break. There are few records of his travel during this long hiatus. He applies for a new passport, even though his old one has not yet expired. He may be trying to cleanse his travel record of a trip to al-Qaida training camps in Afghanistan. Here in Wilhelmsburg, south of Hamburg, Atta rents a 2-room, 3rd-floor walk-up. He pays the $250 a month rent, but many other Arab men also come and go. The blinds are always shut. Their downstairs neighbors never hear a radio or television, only stockinged footsteps and muffled voices of the men above. 2 of these men will work under Atta's command to carry out the 9/11 attacks.
Mohammed Atta lever ett liv i tystnad. Grannarna ser honom inte. Det är tyst i lägenheten och persiennerna är ofta neddragna. Orsaken? Mohammed Atta har ansökt till al-qaida. Skulle någon komma på honom så hade det blivit fängelse. Mohammed Atta blir nära vän med Ramzi bin al-Shib och Marwan al-Shahi.
The three men gather to pray. It is Shahi who leads Atta and bin al-Shib to embrace the radical Islamic interpretation of jihad, a process that ultimately convinces them to become martyrs in a suicide mission.
Var och en för sig så var de ensamma och det skulle förbli så om de inte träffat varandra. De blev tillsammans och växte åt fel håll. En fjärde medlem anslöt sig till gruppen, Siad Jara, en 23-årig student på Teknikhögskolan.
The last question: would you be willing to participate in a jihad operation? Then, they are invited to bin Laden's personal residence at the compound. It's a rare honor for al-Qaida recruits. Bin Laden asks the men if they are willing to carry out a jihad mission in the United States. Bin al-Shib and Shahi had long since embraced the idea of martyrdom. But Atta has been considering returning to Egypt to care for his ailing mother, and Jarrah has just married his Turkish girlfriend. Nevertheless, all four accept, taking an oath of fealty to bin Laden.
They all knew before they left Kandahar that they were going to die for Allah. How? They don't know. Where? They don't know.
They just didn't know the details exactly, so that if one or more of them were apprehended, they wouldn't be able to give up the full details of the operation.
Bin Laden designates Mohammed Atta, the oldest and most educated of the group, as the leader. Atta is obedient and obsessive in his attention to detail. Mohammed Atta and Ramzi bin al-Shib cross the border from Afghanistan and make their way to Karachi, Pakistan. There they meet with KSM for further training. KSM will be the mission's paymaster and day-to-day supervisor. After years of discussion, the idea of flying hijacked jetliners into buildings in America now has a budget, a leader, and a plan.
4 unga män anmäler sina pass stulna. 3 av dem får nya pass med ett rent förflutet. Den fjärde, Ramzi bin al-Shib, nekas pass eftersom att han liknar någon som försökte emigrera till USA. Bin Laden åker till sitt träningsläger för att välja ut en ny man. Han väljer Hani Hanjour, en 29-årig man som redan hade amerikanskt medborgarskap då han jobbade som pilot.
Newark, New Jersey, May 29, 2000. Marwan al-Shahi, the Hamburg cell member who knows the most about the Quran, passes through U.S. immigration here at Newark Airport. 5 days later, ringleader Mohammed Atta also arrives through Newark. Ziad Jarrah, the easygoing Beirut native with a Turkish wife, arrives on June 27th. He flies to Venice, Florida, where he begins taking lessons here at the Florida Flight Training Center.
He showed initiative and paid attention to detail. He was sharp, and I thought he had good potential to become a good airline pilot.
Jarrah settles in, sharing space with a fellow student here across the street from the flight school. Within a few weeks, Atta and Shahi also wind up in Venice. They sign up for classes here at Huffman Aviation. They rent this pink bungalow in Nokomis, just minutes away from their flight school.
Their landlord was most impressed because even in the summertime they didn't turn the air conditioner on. You know, I don't know if it's because they like the heat from the desert or if they were just saving money.
By mid-August, Jarrah, Atta, and Shahi all pass their flight tests. The FAA grants them licenses as private pilots. But they lack the skills to navigate a large jetliner. So they enroll in advanced training on simulators which replicate the controls of a commercial aircraft. The men have never actually flown a jumbo jet, but by the end of 2000, they have enough skills to guide one into a target.
Man kan tro att kaparna bara var amatörer med ett tydligt mål. Men faktum är att bin Laden lät dem utbilda sig. De fick lära sig allt mellan himmel och jord. Som hur man flyger eller bygger en bomb.
Kandahar, Afghanistan. Bin Laden is busy searching his training camps for more volunteers. He's decided to strike at least 4 prominent targets in the U.S. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who is managing the plot for bin Laden, decides that he needs teams of at least 5 hijackers to take over each airplane. Besides a pilot, the team includes so-called muscle hijackers to overpower the crew and passengers.
Most of them were drawn from, according to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, he told me, what is called Department of Martyrs in Kandahar at the time. Many people who came from Yemen, from the Sudan, from Saudi, who wanted to die for Allah. They are very simple thinking kind of people.
These men receive special training for their sole responsibility, storming the cockpit, seizing control of the aircraft. They practice bodybuilding and hand-to-hand combat. They learn basic English words and common phrases. They trim their hair and beards. And they are taught to blend into and steel themselves against the corrupting influence of the West. To prepare themselves to kill people on the airplanes, the men practice slitting the throats of camels. Some make these martyrdom videos. After their deaths, these messages will be combined with footage of the devastation they have created and find their way into al-qaida recruitment tapes.
We'll send a bloodied message to Americans by attacking them in the heartland.
I am writing this with my full conscience, and I am writing this with expectation of the end.
Det hade nyligen varit ett presidentval i USA. Det stod mellan demokraten Al Gore och republikanen George Bush. Gore fick flest röster, men han förlorade för att Bush fick 5 mer elektronröster. Det här presidentvalet blev ett av de mest omtalade i amerikansk historia. Det var första gången på över 100 år som någon har blivit president utan att ha fått mer röster än motparten.
January 20th, 2001. George W. Bush is sworn in as President of the United States.
So help me God.
One of the first decisions the new president faces is whether to respond militarily to the October attack on the USS Cole. President Bush does not order retaliation. In America, after the hotly contested presidential race, life returns to normal. The Baltimore Ravens win the Super Bowl. Gladiator captures Best Picture at the 73rd Academy Awards. And 4 radical Muslims are completing their pilot's training. In the months to come, the men will turn their attention from learning how to gain control of commercial airliners to the task of breaching airport security.
Ja, alla fortsätter leva sina liv, fullt omedvetna om vad som komma skall. Men förberedelserna inför terrorattacken var i full gång och kaparna levde nu i USA.
Spring 2001. Mohammed Atta, Marwan al-Shahi, Ziad Jarrah, and Hani Hanjour, the 4 men who have trained to crash hijacked planes into American targets, are living in plain sight in the U.S. Most of the hijackers live apart and move around the country separately to avoid attracting attention. They rent cars, return them, and rent others. Atta and Shahi traveled to Georgia and Virginia before returning to Florida. Hanjour settles in Patterson, New Jersey, with muscle hijacker Nawaf al-Hazmi. They change apartments every month, mostly furnished rooms in seedy neighborhoods on the fringes of suburbia. One of them, Ziad Jarrah, lives not on an al-qaida stipend, but on $2,000 a month which his parents send him from Beirut. He drives around in a used 1990 red Mitsubishi and makes at least 5 flights to Europe to visit his Turkish wife, Aysel. There is constant friction between Jarrah and the leader of the group, Muhammad Atta. The more easygoing Jarrah chafes under Atta's stern authority. Atta begins to suspect that Jarrah will back out of the mission.
Han var den svagaste länken. Skulle någon avslöja vad de höll på med så var det han.
Las Vegas, summer 2001. Atta, Shehi, and Jarrah all make trips to America's Sin City. Records show that Atta pays cash and stays at this Econo-Lodge on a dreary part of the Strip. No one sees the men gamble, but Atta and Jarrah access the web at a local internet cafe. For months, the men move freely about the country. They use their real names on hotel ledgers, driver's licenses, and plane tickets.
They were among us. You know, they lived among us for over a year before they attacked us, and they did not stick out. It's not like they had 2 heads or horns or anything like that where you could immediately identify them as people who were coming to kill us.
By early July, all 15 of the so-called muscle hijackers are in the U.S. Ringleader Muhammad Atta has personally greeted most of them as they arrive at the airports. The men are young, all under 30, but not physically imposing. What they lack in size, they make up for in blind loyalty to al-Qaida. They believe bin Laden when he assures them they will be rewarded in heaven for their sacrifice.
Humble people in the Arab world, receiving his message and sympathetic with him in a way or another. And that's why he managed to recruit those young chaps and send them to die as martyrs, as he called it.
Al-Qaida hade gett kaparna pengar för att de skulle kunna smälta in. Ingen skulle misstänka något. De skulle leva ett så normalt liv som möjligt. Därför gjorde de som de gjorde. De hyrde bilar, gick på klubbar och spelade poker. Man kan väl säga att de lyckades ganska bra för att ingen misstänkte vad de höll på med egentligen.
September 2001. The 4 teams of hijackers make final preparations. They visit area gyms and use local libraries for access to the internet. On one occasion, an ATM surveillance camera captures this photograph of pilot Hani Hanjour and muscle hijacker Majed Mukhed during seemingly routine daily activities. They are tying up loose ends before executing a plan they hope will kill thousands of people and spark a global confrontation. As the days until 0 hour dwindle, some of the terrorists wire thousands of dollars to an account in the United Arab Emirates. Apparently, they have not spent all of the money that al-Qaida gave them for the plane's operation. They are returning the leftover cash. September 9th, Ziad Jarrah, who has been a constant cause of concern to Atta, may be having second thoughts. He calls his family and tells them that he'll attend a cousin's wedding in Lebanon on September 22nd. He says he has purchased a new suit for the occasion. At 12:05 a.m., Jarrah is driving 90 miles an hour when police here in Pikesville, Maryland stop him. It's a 65-mile-per-hour zone. He politely answers the officer's questions.
Still live in Springfield on Quicksilver Drive? Still live on Quicksilver Drive? Okay, I'm right with you.
Jarrah then signs the $270 ticket and drives off.
Natten till den 11 september hade 19 män gått och lagt sig. Med vetskapen om att de skulle överlämna sig själva till Gud genom att döda tusentals oskyldiga människor. Det var 4 byggnader som skulle utplånas. De 2 tvillingtornen, Pentagon och Vita huset. Den sistnämnda utplånades inte eftersom att passagerarna försökte stoppa kaparna. Och planet kraschade istället på ett fält utanför Shanksville. Dödssiffran ligger på ungefär 2700-3000. De flesta offren dog i tvillingtornen och detta har gjort att World Trade Center har blivit mest uppmärksammat. Flera av offren ringde till larmcentralen eller sina anhöriga eller media precis innan de dog.
Message. Hi Ron, it's me. Just want to let you know I love you and the girls. Tell my mom to, we're going down to that trade center thing, the second plane they just crashed into that building. So we're on our way down there. I love you. I'll talk to you later.
Walter knew this was so serious. I could tell from the sound of his voice. He knew this was something he might not get out of. And I think that he just needed to let us know that he loved us. The voice message that Walter left is still on his business phone, which I've kept in his office. I've probably listened to the message hundreds of times. Everybody has told me that has lost loved ones that you'll lose the sound of their voice, that you can't remember the sound of people's voices after they've gone. And I tend to think that that's true. I think it's a good reminder to have Walter's message for my daughters that they can continue to hear him.
While some messages provide consolation, others are a painful reminder of a missed opportunity to say goodbye.
I woke up to my telephone ringing. I worked nights at the time, so I didn't want to be bothered. And then my cell phone rang again. And I'm like, I'm not going to answer it. I'd say it was probably about 1 o'clock in the afternoon that my cell phone rang with a message.
Saved message. Neil, it's Brian. A plane crashed into the trade center. It's on fire, and I'm in it. And I can't breathe. Tell everyone I love them. I don't get out of here. End of message.
Efter terrorattacken den 11 september så inleddes en lång kamp till att hitta bin Laden och al-qaida. George Bush blev känd för Irakkriget, men han lyckades inte under sina 8 år som president hitta bin Laden. Det skulle dröja fram till 2011 innan det kom fram vart han hade gömt sig.
Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-qaida, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children.
The video we obtained shows the first room on the left covered with blood, and multiple people either died or were wounded in that room. On the right, there's a room that's absolutely ransacked. There are computers whose hard drives have been taken away. Then you see blood going up the stairs.
Hours beforehand, there was a man in Abbottabad, the city where bin Laden was killed, who goes by the name Really.
You ain't fucking kidding me! No, he's
and
dead!
It turns out he actually live tweeted the attack.
God, yeah!
At 1 a.m.
Ding dong, the motherfucker dead! Motherfuckers in hell right now, boy!
Bin Laden mördades och al-qaida försvagades. Men trots det så pågår terrorismen än idag. Men vi får inte vara rädda. Vi måste njuta, vi måste leva, vi måste ha roligt. Göra det bästa man kan av situationen. Till alla er som dog i terrorattacken. Jag känner för er. Vila i frid.
Is that American 11 trying to call?
Buddy, we have some planes. Just stay quiet and you'll be okay. We're heading to the airport.
And who's trying to call me here? American 11, are you trying to call?
Nobody move. Everything will be okay. If you try to make any move, you'll injure yourself and the airplane. Let's stay quiet.
That's good. I thought you were referencing for the move.